Hi there, Radio Pride listeners. Thanks for joining me on this episode. I have a tremendous guest here today, Jeremy Kessler, who's one of the partners and owners of Still Breeze Accounting and Tax. Everyone loves to talk about tax, so it's always great to have a CPA on board here to help us navigate that nasty three-letter word, but it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm really happy to have Jeremy as a partner and collaborator. I met him earlier this year. Great guy, great family guy, and really wonderful story about him and his brother as practice. I think you're going to get a lot of value from hearing from him, learning about different aspects of the tax you may not appreciate. So Jeremy, thanks for joining me on this podcast today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words. And, I don't know anyone who loves talking about taxes more than you do, actually. And that's coming from a CPA, so.
Well, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, I by way of background, a lot of it, my parents got in a little bit of trouble with taxes back in the day. And it's one of those things that their mistakes was actually my benefit. And it got me interested in tax code and understanding it better, right?
Yeah.
Having a different perspective. So we'll definitely go into that a little bit more. But, one thing before we get even started on any of it, I always like to connect with folks like you, like CPAs and tax experts and the other experts too, because it's so important to collaborate to help our common clients, right? It doesn't happen all the time. A lot of people I know maybe listen to this, they kind of are dealing with so many different types of advisors and then they're in the center trying to figure out how to make heads or tails of things. And so I appreciate folks like you and others who are willing to, kind of think together and hopefully help people out at a higher level. Right. So I really wanted to just share that because it's very important to me and I know it is for you too as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. Like we have always said to each other, it's impossible to know it all. So you kind of have to have, arms out in different directions. And I have to be connected with people like you and you have to be connected with people like me in order to help our client overall.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm humble enough to know what I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly.
So before we get into, some of the fun tax talk, tell our listeners a little bit about your background, kind of your current practice today.
So I got my CPA at 5 years out of college. When I first got out, I was actually working for my father in tax. He had started the practice probably about 20 years prior to that. And once I got my CPA, I had to have 2 years of auditing experience. So I went to Deloitte and I was going to get the 2 years of audit experience and go right back to my dad's practice and take over the practice with my brother. And I ended up staying at Deloitte for 17 years. I ended up really enjoying, working with teams, seeing different businesses and how they operate. I was auditing these businesses. And then ultimately, I actually left to one of my clients, was the CFO at one of my clients for a couple of years.
Mm.
And that kind of started dwindling away. We were selling some of the assets. And I said, this is the perfect time to go back and do what I originally wanted to do 20 years ago. But I'd always been doing it on the side. I'd always been helping my dad on the side. I had, when everyone first was a side hustle as well. So I had my own tax clients and I was also helping my dad every tax season. So I went back and he's now fully retired. And my brother and I have just tried to continue to grow organically. And, it's been working out so far.
It's great. I love hearing about, these sorts of family businesses and how they sort of, can pass from generation on and maybe your young one someday will take over.
Yeah. It's funny because there's such a difference between my dad's clients that I've taken over and all of the clients that I have grown over the years and the new ones that I get. The old school ones are all paper still, and they don't like my Dropbox link. They don't like any of that stuff. They don't mind when I electronically file and they get their, refund or if they pay through the bank, but they still want to bring in all their materials.
Well, listen, we all have our own nuances and habits we enjoy, right? We get into our rooms of things, so that's okay. But yeah, it's so funny. So you mentioned that I like to talk about taxes and taxes is a fascinating thing. I mean, in history when it was supposed to be a temporary thing in this country, but now here we are 100+ years later. The tax code couldn't be any more complicated, which I guess is good for you, right?
Yeah.
And your world to kind of, yeah, keeps you guys on your toes. But, to that point, I know a lot of people are upset about taxes and heated and has such a negative thing. I definitely take a little bit different approach and think about, well, why do we have taxes and what can we do positively with it? And
Mhm.
one of the things always, and we've talked about this, is like, what is the tax code? And this isn't my thoughts. You got Tom Reelray, and I first read about this in his book, Tax Free Wealth, around there's just a set of incentives, right? The government is trying to incent us to do certain things in the economy and to do things that they feel are important, and they may not be able to do it, right? They just don't have the wherewithal, the resources, and know-how. And so they want us to do it or somebody to do it. So thinking from that way, if I just listen to them, it's gonna help the economy. It's gonna help the country, right?
That's right.
Right. And so that to me is a much more healthier way to think about it. It isn't just like I'm trying to avoid taxes, right? I'm trying to do good things. And if I can keep more of my wealth and freedom of my money, that's like a good bonus with it. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I get a lot of folks come to me and they complain about taxes and it's like all they are is W-2. I'm like, well, if you're just if you're just a W-2 employee, yeah, you're helping out the economy, you're working, you're paying your taxes, all that. But from a tax savings perspective, it's kind of hard to guide someone much more than telling them start a business, get into real estate, all these things that are in the real Wheelwright book that kind of get you to partner with the government because they want you to do things that will eventually pay off for you, but also for them. So in the beginning, they incentivize you, as you said, and they give you, all these bonuses and credits and everything else so that when you're struggling in those first years, you're not really paying any taxes. But then in the later years where you start to actually make some money, then they're going to get paid off and you're going to make some more money. So it kind of works out.
Yeah, they're smart, right? They get their chunk later down the road and help them mitigate some of the risks. So
Yeah.
right. It could be, in a more positive way, a good partnership, right? And especially,
Right.
like people starting businesses and serving people in a positive way for things that they need or want and serving community. I think it's great. That's kind of how I view it. But we go back to always thinking about, like, to your point, like W-2 earners, which is probably a lot of people who are listening, like they're probably taught, put as much money into tax deferred government accounts for retirement. And that's a good thing, right? We want to have people save for retirement. Super smart. I think it's a great idea. But for most people, that's kind of their tax strategy.
Yeah.
Overall, right? And for successful people, which a lot of people are listening there, that's they feel like the only thing, right? Because they can't do Roth IRAs, can't do other things, and maybe they're not going to start a business. It is about the only thing that they're able to do. And unfortunately, what we're seeing some of my clients, like, and I've seen that across the others, that it's almost like they put too much in there, and now it's actually a tax target later down the road.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
That can happen
This,
for sure.
right. And this is where it's too much of a good thing sometimes is bad. But so for when you're seeing some of your clients, obviously you have a mix of business and personal, like, what are some things that you're seeing? So obviously starting a business is one area, right? Of potentially reducing taxes, right? And what are some of the basic things around that you're seeing that's helping them mitigate taxes as a business?
Well, as part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, there was, they increased the 179, section 179 expense. Basically, if you bought a car for your business, you could 100% write it off in that first year. So $20,000 car, boom, right against your tax liability. So
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, like even that concept of which I was explaining this to my son the other day, and he quickly got it. And he said, well, most people make income and they get taxed on the income and then spend the rest. I said, what if you could actually make income, spend a bunch of money, and then whatever's left, there's a lower amount of taxes you have to pay on it, the
Right.
income, right? Would that be a better way? And that's how businesses work, right? You get taxed on whatever's the net income, not the gross income. And that's a little bit of what you're talking about with, say, buying a car. If it's for the purpose of the business, then you get to expense that.
Yep. And as everyone knows, I mean, everyone's been working from home, right? Especially because of COVID. There used to be 2106. If you were a W-2 employee, you could still deduct working from home. They did away with that years ago. But that's a business expense too. I mean, I'm here in my back room. It's totally separated from my house. And I have a pretty large, home income deduction because of that I deduct against my business income. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's all legit, right? You're serving people, you're using your home for business. And so, that's why I would highly encourage. It may be scary to think about, okay, I'm going to make this multi-million-dollar business. Well, it doesn't have to be that,
right.
right? It could be something a side passion, or something that you're just interested in, even a part-time business, right? There could be massive benefits to it, and give you another source of income, right?
I've seen many times where side hustles become the main attraction, and I have one of my clients is actually on TikTok. She puts makeup on her face and she does videos, and she's basically advertising for these makeup companies, and she's just doing it as a side hustle. And last year she made $110,000, and she's like,
Wow.
she was telling me, she's like, she basically has like no expense because all the stuff's being sent to her. She's got like her computer or internet. It's not a lot of expenses, right? And she was only making about the same in her W-2 job. So she's making double last year, but she's like, I'm doing even better for 2022. She's like, I think I might quit my main job. And she enjoys doing it. Like, I wouldn't want to do that, but like, to each their own,
Exactly. That's the beauty of it. I mean, imagine that story. That's a tremendous story. Because, but if you like to, and there are people obviously benefiting from it, enjoying it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not judging one way or the other, but she has the freedom to maybe do something she just loves.
Right. I mean, and you have to wonder, like, how long does it really take her to do that and make a video? I don't really know, quite frankly, but I can't imagine it takes like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours
Yeah. Yeah.
a day, maybe. And then it's like she's got the rest of the day to do whatever she wants to do.
It's great. Now,
Yeah.
and that's all part of this. I mean, I certainly come across enough people who are, not enjoying their jobs, don't feel fulfilled, but they feel sort of trapped in there. And, this is a way. I know this was kind of more about taxes, but it's also that stream of income you just mentioned that maybe can allow you to make a change, right?
Mhm.
And just so why wouldn't you might get some tax benefits out of it?
Right.
It's like icing on top. So
Right.
So you mentioned the other thing, which is, I think a lot of people think about too. Real estate is a big thing, right? I suspect some of your clients and business owners have real estate too. Everyone talks around it's a tax shelter. I mean, can you talk a little bit about some of the things around the tax benefits of real estate?
Oh yeah. So I mean, you're renting out your rental, so you're getting the income, and then if you're looking at a Schedule E, there is not many Schedule E's that are going to have revenues that are going to go over into the line item on the on the face of the 1040. So it's because there's depreciation, on the building, and that's going to totally offset the revenues that you're getting for the rent. And then there's all the expenses that come with it. And then as that's happening, the building is most likely appreciating. So you're getting this rental income, the renter's paying for the house. You're not getting any additional income on your 1040. And then 15 years down the road, let's say you sell it and it has appreciated at that point. It's a pretty great investment to have if you can do it.
Always do
that. It's all right. If you get a loan too, you're obviously, you have the mortgage interest and all that good stuff against the revenues as well. And you're not paying for it. The bank.
Right. Right. So you're doing a good service. Hopefully, you're not a slumlord being mean to people. You're giving people a good place to live. Right. And, you can, to your point, offset a lot of the income through depreciation or expenses. They're paying off your loan if you have one.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one I always thought was, you ever heard the concept of buy, borrow, and die is a strategy. So you buy the property, you take a loan against it, right? When you die, the appreciated asset gets stepped up in basis and it gets passed on. individual taxes. But that could
Oh
be done
yeah.
a lot from assets, right? So it's, who knows? Laws can change, as we know, they're fluid.
Yeah.
One strategy, but yeah, and I've certainly come across real estate where it's not even people don't feel like direct ownership is it, but even being part of like apartment syndications and things like that, you can still get benefits from some of the tax advantages of it, but you don't have to be as an active player, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you got to vet these operators because they may not all be good, but they could be still give you some of those benefits without having to expend as much energy, right? If you're worried about that competing with life and your jobs. So just something to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good, especially business owners, right? Because they can own their properties, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's go part of it and help defray some of the costs and mitigate that against income, right? It's an expense the business takes.
And I enjoyed the wheelwright, concepts about like, why does the government have these incentives for some of these investments? That's like, well, they want to keep the people housed. you know, one of them was about agriculture. They need people to be fed. It's only things that make sense that the government's trying to team with us to make sure that, they had the mindset too. Like not one person can do it all. Just like what we were talking about before is like, we don't know everything. You have to have like a teammate that is in wealth management and another, so it's all the same kind of, when you
Yeah.
think about it that way.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's trying to do it yourself. I know growing up, I always thought I had to do it myself and got to learn that very quickly. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I can't move enough on this earth to know it all. But yeah, no, and to your point, incentives like so you say to start a business, create new innovations, and provide services and products to people, house people, right, give them a place to live. Which we know today there's like shortages of housing, right, and people are having trouble building enough, right, because of inflation and labor issues.
Mhm.
So to get people to homes. And one of the other areas to, like I said, feed people, land, agriculture, if you want to invest in that area, like natural resources to natural gas, energy type spaces, right?
Mhm.
It's good. And that's, so what's your experience with the, like energy, like natural gas and oil in that space? Because that could be a really good place also for some tax advantages, especially for your W-2 earners.
Yeah. I don't have too much, experience in that with like my clients personally.
But I do know, through my efforts at learning more about it, certainly there are still, because there is risk to it. So everyone's got to get in, recognize there's risk to it, right? Whether they're bad operators or they no, hit the spot with no oil or gas and, just flush your money down the toilet, or environmental issues. So there's a lot of things to consider, but, with that risk, there's a lot of, upfront tax benefits from what I understand for the intangible drilling costs that you can
Yeah.
write off.
Depletion and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Off your active income. So that's,
Mhm.
that's something that people for higher income earners that maybe are unsure where else that it could be a place if through some investigation, right? To see if it
Yeah.
fits. Another spot too, and this is obviously near and dear to my heart, is protecting families, right? And,
Yeah.
that's something they want us to do. More of that we do for ourselves, the less the government has to pick up, right?
Mhm.
From a social network, right? And debt. So that's why life insurance is very highly tax advantaged and works a lot too, like for investment account. But the good thing is you can eventually use that money tax free and
Yeah.
get the tax on it and then pass it on tax free. So there's a lot of good benefits of that if it's understood, which, back in the day, I think that's, back in 86, that's when the whole real estate tax laws changed a bit.
Mhm.
And that's where a lot of the rules got very changed for life insurance. So they exist today the way they are, but they're still very highly tax advantaged.
Mhm.
So it's something to consider for folks looking for, a place to store some cash that's, shielded from taxes. And then of course, the last one was, it was centered around charitable giving is also a good place to,
Yep.
they want us to give to charity and help each other out in community. So there's different avenues to give charity and get deductions. I've seen more sophisticated things, right? Like charitable remainder trusts and
Mhm.
conservation easements, things of that nature, right? Those sorts of things, but you got to look into them, right, Jim?
Yeah.
And what's your experience with some of the charitable giving and gifting? Sort of, I'm sure some of your clients are maybe starting to do that a little bit more. What's that look like? Have you started?
Yeah. I have, one of my clients gives away a lot of money every year, millions. And a lot of it is actually, stock that he has in a particular company. And it's just been, him and his wife, they've become kind of philanthropists, and it reduces tax liability at the same time. So it's like you're helping out. And I mean, you know, I have most of my clients do give a decent amount, but this guy, he's a heavy hitter. So,
Yeah.
but it helps with liability for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I I don't begrudge anyone being wealthy, and you need to get to decide what you do with it. And I think a lot of people start realizing it's a great way to help yourself and help others at the same time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a way to do it. So for you, for your practice too, obviously, you've kind of kept up on a little bit of the kind of recent tax law and changes. Any big things that you've seen come through? I know there's a new tax law that came out recently. Anything else that's sort of, you know,
Yeah. The Inflation Reduction Act,
oh yes,
which is, so oddly named, right? You're going to try, you're going to try reducing inflation, are you? But, yeah, there's a bunch of credits that are in that act. They basically extend ones that were already available. So there was these energy ones. It was, it's a non-business energy property through your, residence credit. And, it was $500, but it was a lifetime credit, and it was based on 10% of spend.
mm,
But now it's 30% of spend, $1,200 per year.
okay,
So it applies to windows, doors, insulation, and then, energy efficient boilers, AC units, all that kind of stuff. And there's different nuances, but it ends up being 600 credit per unit. Like if it's if you buy one boiler and one AC unit, you can only take 600 in
okay,
any year, but it's 1,200 max. So if you're doing a lot of renovations, and it's all going to be energy compliant, I would think, in the day and age. And if it is, you get that credit. So that's a pretty decent credit. And then there's another one for the electric vehicles, as you know, being a Tesla owner. That's
yes,
$7,500. They extended that one to 2032, and the other one's 2032 as well. And now you can get a used electric vehicle, and that's a $4,000 credit.
that's good.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was your take? I know there was a piece of that was related to helping to fund the IRS more, right? What's your kind of general take on that?
I have to call the IRS at times. Trying to get in touch with them is very difficult.
What, their customer service isn't top notch? A government agency?
And believe it or not, they still have returns that you can't electronically file. So if someone has an amended return, for some reason, you can't file an amended return on their system. You have to print it out and sign it like old school and send it in. I've had people that have had amended returns from 2 years ago that still haven't been processed. So there's just such a backup. I think that's where most of the money is going. It's just to hire people to get through these returns, to answer the phone,
Okay.
to deal with all these things. You see all these articles about, oh, they're auditing more and this and that. Yeah, they might hire a couple of new auditors, but they're not hiring 87,000 auditors.
Okay. So we're just shoring up sort of maybe some cracks right there in kind of operations. Should the listeners won't be overly concerned that they're going to get audited more or something like that, right?
Yeah, no.
We're safe. We're safe. We stay above board anyway. I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
by the law anyway. So.
We're not doing anything nefarious here.
No. I think we're both all on the same line. We're trying to safeguard our clients well, not put them
Right.
in small risk. This is really helpful. And, Jeremy, one of the things around, taxes and even your practice, obviously you have your CPA, the tax component of it, but I want to at least, let listeners know, those who are in the business world, like you also have other services you provide, like, bookkeeping and auditing. Can you just share a little bit more about that so listeners can learn about those other services? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm trying to build out more of my bookkeeping services to kind of keep me busier in the summer months. It's like, well, most of my heavy work is, February, March, April, and then it kind of slows down a little bit. But obviously there's folks that are on extension because their K1 haven't come in and all that. But, those kind of trickle in throughout the summer.
Yeah.
And I do have a decent sized bookkeeping business, but that I'm just trying to kind of expand on that currently because it kind of just pays in dividends. Once you get people in the door, you're doing their bookkeeping, you might do their payroll as well, sales and use return. And then, once they get to know me, typically they'll have me do their business return, and then that leads to the personal return. So it's everything kind of all in, their business lives and their personal lives. And having that under one umbrella, I think is important. I just got a new client this year, and she had a bookkeeping service and a TPA doing her. TPA was doing the taxes, and then the bookkeeping service was doing the sales and use returns and bookkeeping. And they did a good job. It was a mess. I actually was just working on it today, and the sales and use returns were so off that she has a $20,000 credit in her account.
Oh,
And I just sent a message to on My Connect, at the website for doing the sales and use return. And I called up, and I was actually on the phone waiting for 45 minutes until I got in touch with someone from the Connecticut Department of Revenue Services. And and this is the funny thing, I just wanted to be like, can you have, this is my client, blah, blah, can you just transfer these funds into the account that's online? Because you can't do it online for some reason.
yeah.
So the guy's like, can you go on to the My Connect, click on this thing here and send us a message? And I'm like, what the hell? See, this is why they have to hire. And I know this is just the Connecticut Department of Revenue Services, not the IRS where they're putting these funds, but they need to put it into all of these, different tax authorities so that we're not jumping through hoops trying to get things done. But yeah, so I'm trying to, build out my bookkeeping services so I can do fun things like that. Like I just did today, I ended up saving this woman $20,000.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're like printing money over there. The Federal Reserve. But, I'm definitely a proponent of it. I see the value, especially people are getting into businesses, and if you or have one, like having the bookkeeping sort of organized, and then it helps funnel into your tax returns, like all that. It's really it's just having financials, right? Even basics, right? Doing your business. So these are all just, I've come to realize and appreciate those things that are part of it, that are not the most fun part for people who are starting a business. Is why you hire people like you and others to help.
Right.
The expert.
And I don't blame them. It's like, if you just have nothing to do with books, and you don't really, and you've never taken an accounting class or something like that, but you do want to start a business and you have the wherewithal to do whatever it is you're doing, I get that you don't want to do the bookkeeping part
Right.
of it, but that's why they should hire me.
Listen, this is all back to that center, the beginning, right? We collaborate in whatever ways we can to do good things, and we need teams of people and networks, and it's always good to have great resources with different unique expertises to bring to the table. So thank you for that. So, Terry, this was great. Interesting. I know we'll have more conversations on different things around taxes, because there's no way a half an hour could cover everything. It's impossible, right? I don't know how big that book is today. I don't even know if it's an actual book.
It's online now. I do have a book. It's about this thing.
I guess best place to reach you, it's at your website. If they want to learn more about you and your services, Steel Breeze Accounting and Tax.
Yep.
That's great. That's great. And Jeremy's a great resource and just a good guy. Really encourage you to reach out to him if you're in the area. And you serve people across the country, right?
Yeah. Yep. I have clients all over, mostly in the Northeast, but I got a couple in Texas as well, and California.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Jeremy, for joining me. Appreciate it. Appreciate your partnership, and look forward to more tax talks in the future.
Thank you, Tom. Of course. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us here today on the Perennial Pride podcast. It's an honor to be a small part of your journey to financial freedom. If you gained new insight on today's episode, please follow us on your favorite podcast app, such as Apple or Spotify, and follow us on our YouTube and Facebook pages. Also, we always love feedback on helping to improve what we're doing here. So please provide in comments and questions so we can make this podcast even more helpful for you.